In the 13th century, Saint Thomas Aquinas began to develop a Christian doctrine of the just war theory under the influence of Saint Augustine of Hippo. He presents his views on just war in work Summa Theologiae, in Pars Secunda Secunda, where he deals with the moral conditions of warfare and the issue of salvation. Aquinas asserted that it is not always a sin to wage war, and he set out criteria for a just war. First, war must occur for a good and just purpose rather than the pursuit of wealth or power. Second, just war must be waged by a properly instituted authority, such as the state. Third, peace must be a central motive even in the midst of violence. Saint Thomas Aquinas asks 4 questions about just war. Is some kind of war lawful? Is it lawful for clerics to fight? Is it lawful for belligerents to lay ambushes? Is it lawful to fight on holy days? Can any war be morally justified? War can only be permitted if 3 conditions are met: legitimate authority, just cause, and right intention. The sovereign, who is a guardian of the state's common property and is concerned for national interests, has the right to defend them from external enemies. On the other hand, private citizens can resolve their disagreements through legal proceedings in the courts. It is not always possible for states in an anarchic structure to resolve disputes peacefully. Thomas Aquinas has a legalistic view of the just cause. He believes that the state has the right to defend itself with violence if an injustice has been committed against it, such as confiscation of territory and self-defense. The state has the right to defend itself with weapons because there is no supranational organization above it that it can turn to for help. A state should have the right intention for war, which is either to promote good or to avoid evil, because a tyrant can easily hide his immoral intentions behind the fight for the national interest. Are priests allowed to fight in war? Thomas Aquinas claims that priests should not fight in wars. First, he believes priests should fight with spiritual and not physical means, such as admonitions, prayers, and making excommunication decisions. Priests can participate in war, not physically fighting, but by encouraging and spiritually comforting. Fighting for priests does not befit service, but they are entrusted with more meritorious deeds and obligated to the greater good. War activities are not in accordance with the duties of priests because this unrest prevents them from thinking about divine things, praising God and praying. Furthermore, priests should be ready to sacrifice themselves for Christ at the altar, not shed other people's blood. Thomas Aquinas believes that if a certain activity prevents a person from fulfilling his duties, it should be avoided, and this type of pacifism is called service pacifism. Then, members of the clergy should stay away from all warlike endeavors including advocating war, because those who actively advocate war are themselves involved in it. Can deception be used in war? Thomas Aquinas claims that deception has a double meaning. On the one hand, it can be fraud, such as lying and breaking promises, which are always immoral, and on the other hand, it can be tactical deception, that is not revealing one's strategic plans. Unlike direct frauds, tactical deceptions do not constitute a breach of international conventions nor violate good faith, which Saint Augustine believed the warring parties should maintain. Therefore, ambushes and forms of deception that are militarily necessary belong to the right intention. For example, a military commander who summons enemies to a meeting under armistice conditions only to ambush their soldiers would be committing unfair fraud. However, suppose the soldiers themselves found out the enemy's attack plans. In that case, they can use that information to defeat the enemy, which would fall under the definition of fraud due to military necessity. Is it permissible to fight during holidays? War is allowed if it is about defending and saving human life, but as soon as the immediate threat disappears, any conflict must stop and become prohibited. Thomas Aquinas did not answer whether it is permissible to wage war on religious holidays of other faiths, for example, whether a Catholic state is forbidden to attack a state during Hanukkah. Secular authors do not deal with issues related to religion, but with issues such as determining the just cause for attacking a country ruled by a communist dictator. The contribution of Christian authors, specifically St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, is significant and indispensable in the modern world. The questions about the just entry into war and the conduct of war that Augustine raised have remained unchanged until today. The moral conditions that Thomas Aquinas dealt with are current among contemporary authors. Finally, the issue of religiously motivated terrorism is raised, in which everything is permitted in the name of God, including killing civilians, which Thomas Aquinas firmly condemns.